Now, in my opinion, there are different kinds of creepy. You've got good old-fashioned classic creepy, strange creepy, creepy, but the most unsettling to me is friendly creepy. Something which, at first glance, looks fun, inviting, colourful. But then quickly you realise that things are off, as though this initial friendliness is not what it seemed, and there's a darker story behind what you're looking at. The image then becomes unsettling as these two opposing feelings collide in your mind. A lot of images in this style feature things which we associate with happy childhood memories. A pool, a slide, that town playmat which every single kid owned at some point. But now the context is changed. These places and objects which once brought so much joy are now empty. They're fading away. And over the years, things which are intended for children have seeped their way into horror. I mean, look at clowns. Once a common thing to see at children's parties and fast food commercials.
Today's subject, the Hamburglar.
Now they're constantly considered one of the biggest fears which people have. Likely in some way because of prolific serial killers like John Wayne Gacy, who was a clown at weekends. Or films and books like Stephen King's It, which is now a horror icon, with the remake becoming one of the highest grossing R-rated movies of all time. But aside from this, there's something creepy about taking something which is aimed for children and placing it in a horror setting, because the two are so opposite. So what does all of this have to do with Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared? Well, it's easy to just grab a doll and put it in a dark, scary room and say, look everyone, look how spooky it is, and then bosh, millions of dollars. But what the new Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared show has that makes it stand out is subtlety. Instead of looking like most horror movies, needing to constantly show you creepy house, creepy hallway, creepy creep, it appears bright and cheerful at first glance, taking the form of a children's puppet show. And then, the more you look, the more you watch, you begin to notice that, just like with these images, something is off. So I thought it'd be a bunch of fun to join these murder puppets and do a big old deep dive into the creepy horror fun that is Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. Episode 1. The episode begins and it's black. Total darkness. A soft tune in the style of a music box begins to play as the image of a spinning model house fades in from the middle. As though you're just waking up, the footage is flickering, as though it's recorded on an old-fashioned camera. The house looks too perfect to be real, with smooth edges and a soft pink colouring. The house has some lovely trees around it, again strangely smooth. The background is made up of green rolling hills and a blue sky. Right out the gate we have a peaceful, colourful setting. We then zoom into the front door and the music picks up, changing to the more upbeat theme, in which the three leads sing in unison about how
there's three of us, just three of us, there's him and you and me.
Alongside visuals of various photos and portraits of the trio hung on the colourful walls. The camera pans quickly between two portraits, and we see part of the wall has been chipped away, with someone stood behind it, peering in at them. They're being watched. Then we go from this over-the-top, cheerful intro song to the three leads sat around the kitchen table in silence. We're so used to seeing these kind of felt characters and puppets being so animated in their movements and the way they talk in order to grab children's attention. But here, they're sat so casually, talking so casually.
Well, what are we supposed to be doing now?
What?
We have Red, who, despite looking the most bizarre out of the three, is actually the straight man of the group. He's probably the only character in the whole show who speaks like a normal person.
I guess we stayed up all night talking again.
He's generally confused about the bizarre antics, but goes along with them anyway. His appearance is lots of red string hanging down like a mop, as though he's some kind of red Sasquatch. You never really see his mouth, a big indicator of emotion, making him feel even more passive. He's the only one of the three to be played by an actual person, instead of puppeteered like the others, making his movements more natural, less exaggerated. He's pretty quiet and seems to not really care all that much about what's going on around him. I'm not sure why, but every time he speaks I can't help but hear the YouTube reviewer I Hate Everything's voice coming from this fire noodle man.
I was broken by these a long time ago, you know. I just know, you forget about some of them.
I guess we stayed up all night talking again.
Maybe that's his true identity. And sat next to him is Yellow. Yellow is the most childlike out of the trio. He sits on a colourful stool and is the smallest out of the three, rocking some blue overalls. His eyes almost look as though they are popping out, placed on the outside of his head. looking constantly shocked and scared at the same time, and his mouth hangs open like he's waiting for you to say something, confused. He's always asking questions like he doesn't understand what's happening, even though none of them really do.
What happens now? What are you doing? What do you think happens when we die? Do we ever come back?
He talks in a very slow way, as though he's struggling to think the next word in the sentence as he's saying it.
I'm making bits and parts, although sometimes I feel a bit like the bits and parts are making me.
And last but not least, we have Duck. Duck resembles a grandfather. He's an old chap, wearing an old school grey blazer. His voice is high-pitched and shrill.
I would like to know what's meant to happen today.
And he's typically the most cynical of the trio, often being the first one to challenge the bizarre stuff going on around them.
Excuse me, do you have an appointment?
That's it. I've had enough of this place.
He's fairly blunt and says things how they are. Instead of a stool, he sits on a rocking chair and is constantly seen reading a good old-fashioned newspaper. He can be fairly cranky at times, but he's an old sport, so we'll let him off. And now we've met the boys, we get our first look at the inside of our lovely little trio's humble abode. Everything looks fake, artificial, made from felt and fabric, as if you could tear it open, ripping the stuffing out. It's full of lovely smooth edges and warm colours. Ah, how relaxing. Duck then breaks the silence, wanting to know what they're getting up to today. But, according to Red, the schedule says absolutely nothing at all. And he's actually fine with this.
Honestly, I don't mind it.
He's up for doing nothing today, kicking back and taking it easy. But to Yellow and Duck, this is unacceptable. They have to be doing something. Duck then asks someone out of frame,
What do you think we should do?
and it's revealed there's actually 4 fellows sat at the table. A newspaper is ripped away, revealing this 4th member to be a talking briefcase. Now, a briefcase is a common indicator that someone is determined. They're on their way to get that dollar. And this briefcase may as well be called Mr. Business, because boy does he love working. But, because we never do find out his name, I will be calling him Mr. Briefcase instead. Red is confused as to who this guy is,
Who is this?
as though he just appeared out of thin air. Despite being the first scene, we know he's not one of the gang because he wasn't with the others in the intro song, heard just moments before. These talking objects pop up constantly throughout the show, often to teach the trio very watered down and simple lessons about life. Having so many objects that talk is kind of unsettling. It makes me think that anything in their house could be alive and watching them without them knowing. This briefcase fella then tells the trio that it's time to get moving.
I certainly wouldn't want to be late for my job, would I?
The way he says this is with so much enthusiasm. An upbeat instrumental begins playing as the briefcase munches down his full English like a maniac. Not wanting to be late for work, he can't even take time to enjoy his breakfast. He describes to the trio how amazing work is.
I've got a million things to do today.
A million things.
They challenge him, saying that it actually sounds quite stressful. Yellow tells them he already has a job, on his shoulder. But it's revealed to be a disgusting talking welt instead. This is where we get our first glimpse of the gore seeping through. It's quick, not wanting to dwell on it too much, but it takes you out of this fairly innocent conversation and is great foreshadowing for what's to come. But before we can even process what is wrong with Yellow, we're dragged into our first upbeat lesson song. These songs are fast-paced, going from location to location every few seconds. This jig is all about how you can be anything you want to be, with the trio dressed up as different occupations.
You could be the one who makes people better when they're poorly. Oh, careful.
It's a very optimistic view on working, and Yellow and Duck get sucked right into it.
Maybe I could be the one who plants a tree, cuts it down to make a shed.
And I will invent a digital currency based around respect.
Fantasizing about what they could do with their lives. Red, however, says how he could be the guy who sits around and does nothing all day, feeling pretty unmotivated. Mr. Briefcase is not pleased with this.
Okay, I get it. So you want to be like my brother, Unemployed Brendan.
Unemployed Brendan is the opposite of Mr. Briefcase, who he himself describes as perfect and successful. Unemployed Brendan has no glasses and his trousers have a patch on them. He talks with far less confidence.
Oh, you don't want to end up like me. Oh, I'm very shameful and upset.
And gets annoyed at his brother, asking him why he calls him Unemployed Brendan and not just Brendan, as though that's his entire identity. This sums up pretty well Mr. Briefcase's attitude towards the unemployed. He looks down on his brother and pities him. Brendan's outburst is then interrupted by them all getting swept back up into the jolly song. Mr. Briefcase goes from telling them that they could even be astronauts to telling them that they could be the guys who work as a team in the workplace. He carries on singing the song as he runs away through the door, his voice and the music fading away, turning to silence. When the trio attempt to follow him, opening the door to see where it leads, it's a regular old janitor's closet. The briefcase man is gone. He's abandoned them, swept them up in a fun song, and planted them into what we learn is the workplace. The fact that he leaves without warning is a good sign that he doesn't want to answer any questions or put up with any arguments. Naturally, the trio are confused, and so are we. Why is he taking them here? Mr. Briefcase told them they can do whatever they want for a job, but now they're at an assembly line, and they don't know how to leave without him. He was the one who started the song, and so the reason they were travelling between places, and now he's disappeared, so has their way out. The room is grey and dull, with the low whirring of machinery being heard in the background. It's a great contrast from this fun song about how you can be anything, which was being sung just moments before. This room is an assembly line for a company named Petersons and Sons and Friends Bits and Parts Limited. Cool, bit of a mouthful. In the room are two workers who themselves are bits and parts, with Duck telling Yellow,
"Don't get too close to them. They look feral."
And then we cut to them and they look like this. I like how they look so friendly. It goes to show that if you add big eyes and a smile to anything and have it be made out of felt, it will look appealing, even if it is a hunk of metal. Red then hears a phone ringing, coming from the room next door, and decides to investigate. And when he enters, the lighting becomes dark. There's loads of files on the shelf. It looks like any old office, but it's such an unusual place to find a puppet in, who are usually surrounded by such bold colours and inviting spaces. And when you think of an office, they're intended to look professional and neutral, lacking these bold colours like the shade of red. The lighting switches from the usual high exposure, well lit look that most scenes have, to only one source, a small lamp, making red multiple shades of, well, red. Instead of just bold red, there's now darker shades on him. The reason that the lighting in kids shows is so even is that kids find it easier to make out basic shapes, and the more shading you have on a character, the harder it is for them to concentrate and comprehend what they're looking at. Yellow gets curious about what the wrenchman and bolt boy are actually doing, taking globs of metal and warping them into parts. They describe it as,
We're making bits and parts.
Although sometimes I feel a bit like the parts are making me.
That makes me laugh.
ha ha ha. They throw around some classic workplace banter and it's just so much fun. Yellow gives the job a try and what do you know? He's a natural, making bits and parts with ease. Duck then comes over and asks how they're going to get out of here.
Sorry, I'm just at work.
You see, he's a model employee, doesn't ask questions and gets on with it, telling Duck the exact same joke that the Boltman told him just moments before.
What are you doing?
I'm making bits and parts, although sometimes I feel a bit like the bits and parts are making me.
He's already one of them and doesn't want to leave, and his uniform shows this. Instead of his usual blue overalls, Yellow now rocks a high-vis vest, identical to the ones the metal men are wearing, wanting to fit in with the others. Duck then also attempts to make bits and parts, but fails miserably, creating this unholy abomination. A small metal glob with missing teeth and ciggies sticking out of its forehead. It screams in pain and wishes to die, dragging itself towards the mechanism, being mashed up to death and turned to dust. Oh boy am I jealous. He was a bit that did not fit, and so he's no use to them, and gotten rid of. Could this be foreshadowing? Being rejected by the assembly line, Duck tries to go over to Bolt and grab his helmet. He lifts it up and reveals a grotesque creature, screaming in agony, protruding from his head like a parasite. This relaxed, calm and friendly appearance is just that, an appearance, and this reveal instantly makes you feel uneasy for the trio, as these creatures are clearly not what they appear to be. We've been told that accidents happen here all the time, and on every danger sign is this Boltman getting hurt, slipping and having a gear fall on his head. Could this be the injury that caused him to have a mangled mess underneath his helmet? But before he can say anything, it's lunchtime. every time something out of the ordinary or sinister happens, the trio are quickly distracted by a loud noise or by being thrown into another scenario.
A vending machine, it's a vending machine. We all eat lunch from a vending machine.
Not that there's anything wrong with eating from a vending machine, but it's a fairly odd thing to be so excited about. It's as though it's the best part of their day. And it's not like, oh, we occasionally grab a little snacky from the vending machine. It appears as though it's their daily routine, with everyone getting the usual vending machine snacks. A slice of lasagna, a single ciggy, and some water. But not any old water, because this water is two things which water should never be: hot and black. Sputtering out of the vending machine like a drain being unclogged, spilling over itself on the edge of the cup, making a big old mess of things. They all line up, and Yellow has no trouble getting his Siggy Lasagna meal deal, because he's one of the team now.
You must be the new guy I've been hearing so much about. How are you?
Duck, however, who is having trouble fitting in, is told that he needs a token for his meal, despite no one else having one. And so, unfortunately, he will have to get his munch from the free vending machine, a rustier, less appealing machine which pretty much sums up the word unhygienic. It's as though all the leftovers and cigarette butts have been scooped up and chucked into this machine. In a robotic, distorted voice, it tells Duck to reach out his hand, or wing, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, I reckon. Hold your hand out then.
And out plops a disgusting brown fluid, covering his hands. But oh no, she gave him too much, and asks him to put some back in, and the mental image of him trying to scoop up this brown sludge and ram it back up into this rusty pipe makes me want to be sick. Now, back to Mr. Red on the phone. Red is now wearing a suit. It's as though in the little time since we last saw him, he's now become a part of this place, and it's already having a toll on Red, as he is usually so calm and nonchalant. But after just a few minutes in the workplace, he is already shouting angrily on the phone.
No, I can't help you. I don't work here. Okay, fine.
And it's no coincidence this new suit look is covering up his bold red colours. It's as though the children's puppet show elements are fading by the minute. As he begins to walk back to the others, the phone, which is alive, starts talking to him, buttering Red up, telling him he's a real go-getter, a real suck-up, this telephone. Every office has one. She's impressed by his big shouty voice.
Hello to you. I really liked what you did at the end there.
A nice commentary on how often the boss is just someone who shouts the loudest and gets the most attention, who doesn't even want to be there. As Red earlier on said how he wants to just sit around and do nothing. His dream has come true, as all we see Red do throughout this episode is hang around as other people do everything for him.
You didn't wash your hands.
Yeah, so what? Somebody else would do it.
Whilst he gets all the attention, credit and power. His every action is influenced by his number 2 now. Red gets peckish and gets up to get some Siggy Lasagna, but Phone says they've already made him salmon and diamonds, a far more luxurious meal, depending on your tastes. The 3 different meals we've seen so far do a pretty good job of summing up favouritism in the office, with the outcast duck getting scraps and it's almost unedible. Yellow, who's part of the team now, gets a nice but modest Siggy Lasagna and black water, with the big boss Red getting his fancy diamonds and more pricey but healthier fish. We then cut to Duck as he watches one of them super fun health and safety videos.
Health and safety. First things first, we are well aware of our reputation.
Hinting that this is a place where people are frequently injured, but we're yet to see an accident, so we can assume that one is on its way. In fact, the video guarantees it.
At some point we will have an accident, and that's a promise.
It makes the workers appreciate work more. You see, a freak workplace accident acts as motivation and happiness. It gives them peace of mind knowing that, as sad as they may get at times, at least they're not the one being burned alive or mangled alive or crushed alive. They are still alive. It's the mentality of I'm glad it's them and not me that keeps this workplace going. Confused and fed up, Duck goes to speak to Red. As soon as he enters the room, the phone tells Duck that he needs an appointment, trying to deter him from getting Red to leave.
What do you want? I'm busy.
Busy? What are you talking about? We've only been here for 9 minutes. Hang on.
Confused as to what Red's wearing and annoyed when he doesn't want to leave, Duck is told by Red that if he's struggling to fit in, go and talk to the care hound. Now, he could have easily said care dog, but a hound often refers to a kind of dog which is used to hunt down and kill another animal. Like Mr. Burns, for example.
Smithers, release the hounds. Release the hounds. Release a hound.
And so the idea that something which mainly serves to hunt down and kill another animal can be described as caring kind of contradicts itself. Big Boss Red then tells the outcast Duck to leave as he's a busy boy making all them calls, which Duck challenges, saying anyone could do that, before ripping the phone from the desk.
Don't do that.
Part of it coming with her. It's a good sign that she too is some kind of prisoner here, literally stuck to the desk.
He can't do that! Quick, show him who's boss!
Mrs. Phone is horrified by Duck's refusal to step in line, challenging both the boss's authority and damaging her, telling Red to take action. He stands up, towering over Duck as the music builds tension, and says the most devastating words a Duck man can hear.
I'm afraid I'm letting you go.
Throwing a box in his hands, presumably with his belongings in it. But they've been here 10 minutes, he doesn't really have any belongings. Elevator doors slide shut on the frame, seemingly out of nowhere, teleporting Duck into a dark elevator. With deep blues and blacks, it's such a contrast from the bright colourful opening in the kitchen. The elevator changes from up to down, green to red. A nice piece of foreshadowing that wherever he's being taken is probably not good. Elevators are naturally claustrophobic places, and so now he's been let go, many would see this situation as they've been put in a box with no income and no way out. The panel on the wall of the elevator assures Duck that
You sound stressed.
I'm not stressed. I'm unemployed.
I think this is really clever wording from the writers, because if he'd have said fired, it would have a different meaning. It's as though he's now free. I mean, this place has a pretty sinister feel to it, and has easily sucked the other two in, as though this is the only place they know now.
What do you want? I'm busy.
Let's not talk about work over lunch.
Don't even talk to Claire until she's had her lasagna.
And Duck realises this, but the elevator panel isn't listening, because we jump into another jolly song, and hey, it's time for some good old-fashioned 2D animation. This song is a psychedelic look into stress, and all the things that people tell you to get rid of it, from taking a holiday to taking pills, with imagery of Duck balancing on a tightrope above what look like demons trying to get at him. The art style has bold, thick lines of colour against a black background, as though he's in a void. The vocals have a distorted echo to them, making them almost hard to understand. Similar to the song, which gets increasingly more complicated, giving out advice which is almost impossible to follow because it's all over the place. Talking about your mind is a garden, and actually it's a book, but it's also kind of a cube, and you're the cube. But stop there, because that is where Duck draws the line.
Stop it. I'm not a cube.
He then acts like me when I'm playing a fighter game. He mashes all the elevator buttons, including one with the symbol of a dog. Or should I say hound, because oopsie, he's chosen a session with the care hound. Throughout the episode, Duck has been challenging everything, never being silent and falling in line. And so to this workplace, he has no value, and now appears to almost be hidden away from the others, taken care of in secret. Even though he did attempt to fit in like Yellow, from the beginning it was clear he was not a good fit, just from the nature of his character. He questions aspects of this workplace which don't seem to make any sense.
But health and safety is important to us in our own special way.
What? What does that even mean?
And is the one to initially describe these bits and parts as feral.
Don't get too close to them. They look feral.
It's as though he sees elements of what this place really is. Now it's time for the last resort. If he's not going to get in line, taking pills and holidays to change his attitude, they'll force him to themselves. The lights flicker and a quiet siren starts playing, a sign of impending danger. The panel lady tells Duck to whisper his complaints quietly, as it's okay to complain as long as no one else hears it. You wouldn't want Duck affecting the office mood now, would you? A panel on the wall then opens, and a horrific, distorted dog looks back at Duck. Opening its jaws, we get a point of view as the hound rushes towards him. It cuts to black before Duck is thrown back out into the elevator, covered in some kind of translucent slime, most likely saliva.
There was a
There was a ghost! There's ectoplasm! Did you see the ghost?
The care hound has eaten him up and spat him back out. The elevator then asks him how he feels, and he hesitates for a second, thinking about it.
I'd better get back to work.
Glad to have you back on board.
It's not quite clear what the care hound is, but it seems to completely alter Duck's mindset, getting rid of his traits which are seen by the workplace as negative, his questioning and pessimism, turning him into a model employee.
I'm part of the team.
Who always has a smile and always does what he's told, no matter what. It's as though he's been brainwashed, forgetting his desire to leave. Grabbing a nice hot cup of black water, Boltman comes over to greet him, exactly how Yellow was treated before.
You must be the new guy I've been hearing so much about. How are you?
You must be the new guy.
Guilty.
Because his mindset has been altered, he's now a part of the team, and they can treat him as such. Even exchanging the classic workplace banter we've seen so much of. All the workers are gathered around for someone's leaving party. But whose? Rumour even has it that the Mr. Peterson of Peterson & Sons and Friends Bits and Parts Limited is going to make a big speech. And at this point, we still don't actually know who Mr. Peterson really is. But not to worry, because here he comes now, and it's Red. But really, really old now, with many of his red strands of string now grey with age. He is Mr. Peterson, with Red's position being wrapped up in a bow for him the minute he arrived. It's as though this place was created just for them. So Red has lived here his whole life, in the blink of an eye. Just like the man of the hour, the one who the leaving party is being phoned for. Yellow, just like Red, since the last time we saw him, he has put on a couple years, with grey hair, wrinkly skin and a grey flashy suit. He's even struck up a workplace romance in these 4 minutes and had a child. Life moves so fast these days, but despite the workplace's efforts to make Duck an ideal employee, he still notices that something is off here. The whirring of the machines intensifying as he breaks from his trance, grabbing Yellow's leaving card and chucking it onto the assembly line before it is caught up in the mechanism, shredded to pieces. And as Yellow tries to grab it, we get what we were promised. A great big fun workplace accident, and boy is it a gruesome one, sending guts and blood flying everywhere. It's a massive shock to the calm, monotonous routine we've seen throughout the rest of the episode, and throws everything into chaos, with the other employees cheering in joy, so happy that they're not the one in the brutal accident. It's almost as though they lured the trio in just for this reason.
It does make me appreciate not being in an accident. I feel so alive, yeah!
In the hopes that one would be injured. These creatures are so used to the repetitive small talk and routine of this place that a sudden burst of violence is seen as entertainment to them. Duck shouts at Red to do something, and Red jumps into action, turning into Alan Sugar and yelling, "You're fired." Because that's all he knows how to do as the boss. He's never had to do anything other than fire people and take calls, leaving Duck to take actions into his own hands. Seeing a medical kit on the wall, he rushes towards it. Well, what do you know? It's the briefcase man from the beginning, and instantly the trio are sucked back into the song where it left off, playing out different jobs, still in shock and confusion from the actions which just took place.
You can be anything you want to do.
The song then cuts out quickly and they're back where they started, in the kitchen, except now the sun is setting. How long did that song go on for? Yellow is clearly traumatized.
My hand, my child.
Moments before having lost his hand and having a whole nother life, a wife, a child, a career, it likely now just feels like a fever dream. The briefcase says it's time for him to shoot off, but before he can go, Duck asks,
"What was all of that? All of that stuff that we just did? What was it all for?"
They've been on a crazy journey, nearly died and barely made it out the other side. What was the point in all of that? Well, a little bit of money. Mr. Briefcase chucks a shiny gold coin at them. Time slows down as the coin spins in the air before landing straight in Duck's eye. Painful. So there we have it, episode 1, and it does a pretty good job of setting the tone of what's to come. The trio are thrown into a scenario, focusing on a particular aspect of life, often through a cheery song or dance. Things start off fairly innocent, but escalate until the true horror of what's happening comes through. But at the end of the day, they end up back home, safe and sound, for the most part. Maybe a little bit traumatized, but that's part of the fun. Episode 1 gives us a more honest look into the darker, more monotonous side of the workplace, by starting off with that lovely song about how you can be anything, and then before you know it, they're trapped in an assembly line of recycled phrases and unfair treatment. You see, these puppet shows that the style is taken from often offer up an ideal version of life, where everything is explained as simple lessons, and of course it is, because the goal is to teach children valuable lessons like don't steal and don't bully. And so you need to make these lessons as straightforward as possible in order to get through to them, meaning they often end up a bit black and white. Everyone is so happy and jolly. They're singing all the time, and it's just filled with bright colours. Everything, and I mean everything, is made from felt, in order to make it look as comfy as possible. And so there's something unsettling about watching these shows as an adult, knowing that the world, it really isn't like this. It's not this happy, jolly place where everything is black and white and everyone's singing all of the time. See, everyone gets sad. Everyone struggles with something. Everyone has 99 problems, but not being subscribed to Waterwave is not one of them. Hopefully. And Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared leans into this concept. It feels like the 3 lead characters are trapped in one of these kids shows, but the colourful mask is slipping. In my opinion, each episode builds on this formula, getting better and better than the last. Howdy. So I hope you enjoyed my breakdown of episode 1. I'm doing videos on every single episode, and episode 2 should be out very shortly, so subscribe and hit the bell if you don't want to miss it. And like I said, every episode really does get better than the last, and it starts on a pretty high note, so you can imagine how good the other episodes are. And then at the end, I'm going to compile them all into one video, so that'll be coming out too, as well as more Doctor Who and House of the Dragon content, and just a whole bunch of shows, all the fabulous shows, everyone's favourite shows, I'm going to cover them all. And once again, thank you for 600 subscribers, that's honestly amazing, you guys are the best. I will catch you in the next video.